VRAM.
VRAM.
Everyone's talking about VRAM in these days, but what exactly is it and why does it matter when it comes to gaming? Let's dive in. So VRAM, or video memory, is the memory used by the GPU to store data, so anything from shaders to textures and even models we see in games and even the ones we don't see yet, but still the GPU has to render them even if they are not in our field of vision. It is essential for rendering graphics smoothly and efficiently. Over time, VRAM usage has increased as technology has evolved. Today, mid-range GPUs generally come with 16GB of VRAM, and the top-tier cards like the RTX 5090 can have as much as 32GB. Compare that to just a decade ago when the most mid-range GPUs had 2 or 3GB and high-end models maxed out at around 6GB. Now, the real question is, how does low VRAM impact your gaming experience? To answer this, I tested a couple of older GPUs, the HD 7770 with 1GB of VRAM and the R7-250X, essentially the same GPU as the HD 7770 but with 2GB of VRAM and a slightly lower clock speed. You might be thinking, but gaming, why are you using such old tech? No one cares about those old GPUs. And that's a fair point. But the fact is, VRAM limitations are still relevant today as they were back in the past, even with newer cards. The conclusions we will draw from these tests still apply to modern GPUs, and I don't have the latest models for comparison, but if you're interested in that, please feel free to check other videos out. So I ran 6 different games and the results generally fell into 3 categories. The first one were the games that don't benefit much from additional VRAM. So some games don't see noticeable improvements. These games are often optimized to work with certain VRAM limits. A good example is Rome 2 Total War. Whether you played on low settings or cranked everything up to high, there were no significant performance difference between the two cards. On high settings, the 2GB card used 1900 MB of VRAM, while the 1GB card used 970 MB. The bigger difference came in RAM usage. The 2GB card consumed 7.6 GB of RAM, while the 1GB card used 9.2 GB. When a game runs out of VRAM, it starts using system memory, and if that runs out, it spills over into storage, which is far slower and less efficient. But here that wasn't the case. Secondly, games that see some improvements with more VRAM. Some games benefit from the extra VRAM, though not by a huge margin. Games like The Witcher 3, Counter-Strike 2 and World of Tanks fall into this category. The Witcher 3 wasn't playable on either card, but the 2GB card did provide slightly better 1% lows. Counter-Strike 2 used up to 978 MB of VRAM on the 1GB card and 1934 MB on the 2GB card. Both cards had similar average frame rates, but the 1% lows were much smoother on the 2GB card, offering a more stable experience, actually something that I would call enjoyable and playable. In World of Tanks, the performance gap was noticeably only at high settings. At ultra settings, the 2GB card had better averages and 1% lows. Last but not least, the games that perform significantly better with more VRAM. These are also games that show a clear benefit from additional VRAM. Civilization 6 and Metro 2033 Redux fall into this category. In Civilization 6, the 2GB card had 1% lows that were consistently higher than the 1GB card's average. The R7-250X was on average 40% faster than the HD 7770. At high settings, the 1GB card used 981 MB of VRAM, while the 2GB card used 1963 MB. With the 2GB card also using less RAM, 11.1GB compared to 13.6GB, so this is the same situation as we had with Rome 2 Total War. In Metro 2033 Redux, We saw a performance boost at minimum settings when using the 2GB card. The VRAM usage at these settings was 956 MB for the 1GB card and 1100 MB for the 2GB cards. Also, the 1GB card had issues loading certain objects at higher settings. With the advent of ray tracing and other graphics enhancing technologies, VRAM has become even more crucial. Ray tracing requires more VRAM, and other technologies like upscaling can help a GPU remain relevant for longer, but the real question is, at what price do we get more VRAM? The RTX 4060 Ti, for example, there are two variants, one with 8GB of VRAM and another with 16GB. The 8GB card is priced at $400, while the 16GB costs $500. According to Tom's Hardware, GDDR6 RAM, which is used in VRAM, costs about $3 per gigabyte as of June 2023, at least according to this article. So adding 8GB of RAM should cost roughly $27, but why does the price increase by $100? Sure, there are costs involved in manufacturing, but the price difference seems excessive when considering the actual cost of the memory. On the other hand, AMD's RX 7600 comes with 8GB version, which is priced at $270, while the 16GB variant that has an XT at the end costs $330. So a $60 difference makes more sense given the added memory. Finally, it is essential to consider how powerful the GPU is in relation to the VRAM it has. You can think of the GPU as the engine of a sports car, while the VRAM is its fuel. If you have a powerful engine, so GPU, but not enough fuel, VRAM, you will run out of juice before you hit the end of the race. On the other hand, if you have too much fuel and a weak engine, the extra weight will slow you down even more than it's needed. Looking at the RTX 4060 Ti, the 16GB version, and the RX 7600 XT, the 16GB version, the former costs $500 and is about 70% faster if we exclude ray tracing. The RX 7600 XT, on the other hand, costs $170 less for the same amount of VRAM. While the RX 7600 XT might not perform as well in ray tracing, it offers an excellent value for money. So in conclusion, more VRAM is generally a good thing for gaming, but it needs to come at a reasonable price and be paired with a GPU that can actually take advantage of it. If the GPU is too weak to utilize the extra VRAM, you might not see the benefits you are expecting. So when choosing your next GPU, think about how much VRAM you really need and make sure the rest of the specs align with your gaming goals. The worst thing that can happen is for you to spend your hard-earned money for a GPU that underperforms because of lack of VRAM and on top, that is priced poorly. For low budget, as of now, I strongly recommend Intel's B580 as it offers on par performance to the RTX 4060 with 12GB of VRAM and at a lower price point. If you have any more specific questions, feel free to ask them in the comment section or join my Discord server. That's it for this video. Be sure to leave a like and drop a comment, and also share this video with other people who might be interested in the topic, as that helps the channel out. And I will see you all on the battlefields. Gaming Teacher out.